Lancaster-James, a chartered psychologist who's Director of Services at the Onset Welfare. Thanks so much, Honey, for joining us. How important is hugging? Do you think that the importance of that contact has been really underlined over the past year for us?
Absolutely. It's so vitally important. I mean, actually, as social beings, we are biologically hardwired to require the sensation of physical touch and physical contact with other human beings. We know actually from some of the earliest studies in psychology, going right back to the 1950s, there were some classic studies by a researcher called Harry Harlow, who showed that infant monkeys would prefer and needed good social contact and hugging, if you like, more than they actually preferred going to something that gave them food if they were deprived of a mother. So this goes back many years. We know that it has an impact on the brain. We actually know that, for example, if you've been deprived of physical touch and physical contact with other people for a long time, we can develop a kind of condition called skin hunger, where it affects our mood, it increases stress. And what we know, for example, is that you can do some things yourself to moderate some of that. So if you are really desperately in need of some contact, massaging your own skin, using lotions and things like that, even when we're allowed to, booking yourself in for a massage or a haircut and things like that can all help. But of course, so many people out there right now are just longing to hug their loved ones who they've missed, because they also feel guilty, particularly for the elderly, I think, in our families who have been so isolated for so long. We all do want to get to a point where we can hug each other again.
And Honey, I mean, there will be people out there who are worried about going back to physical contact, feeling awkward, almost as if they've forgotten how to do it, how to be close to other people again. Do you think that we'll get back to how we were quickly, or will it be difficult for some?
It will be difficult for some, undoubtedly. And of course, there are some people who actually responded to lockdown life, this new normal, quite well, because perhaps they were very introverted and they didn't like the hugging culture that we have. So there will be some people who are saying, oh, don't come near me, I don't really want that. And I think that's where communication's going to come in. It is important for you not just to launch straight up to people and start hugging them and touching them, of course, not only from the perspective of the government regulations and advice, but also just because we're all going to have our own needs to come out of this at our own pace. And some people won't be ready for that right now, but there will be other people who are longing to give you a hug. And I guess it is just about having that conversation and saying, look, I don't know about you, but I'd love to give you a hug right now, but are you ready for that yet? Or something else? Or something
I might get punched in the face if I go around doing that at the BBC newsroom, I tell you that now, Honey. There are some people who actually probably don't really like hugging and never have, and maybe quite enjoyed this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, several people have said to me that, look, you know, we focus a lot on the negatives of the pandemic, but some people have actually quite enjoyed it. I mean, there's nothing more awkward, is there, when you have that kind of, oh, is this a hugging scenario? Is this a one cheek kiss? Is it a two cheek kiss? Lots of people find that, I think especially Brits, find that kind of awkward. So some people are quite happy with the lack of physical contact, but then there are other people who, particularly among the very isolated, people who've been living alone, people who have been elderly, people who have been shielding, who I think are in need of some physical contact. And you can just approach that and say, perhaps, you know, could I just put, you know, would you like to hold hands? Or can I sit a bit closer to you? Shall we sit next to each other? You can get gradually used to that. And I think the other thing is that there are people who, let's be honest, this past year, there were times when people really felt they needed to hug someone, times of loss, times of grief, and they weren't allowed to do that. And some people have had a kind of a moral injury about that. You know, I've heard people saying, I wasn't able to hug my grandma when my grandfather died, and things like that. So for many people, this is going to be an important time, but I think it is about going at our own pace, but remembering, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it has taught us how much we do need contact with one another. And so I can't wait for us to start getting back to that again. And we will get there. We will adjust to the new normal, just as we did last time.
Some positive thoughts there, Honey. Always good to get them. Thank you very much.